Welcome to this month's Kelsey Museum virtual flash talk. As always, these are quick 15-minute talks with 15 minutes of time at the end for questions. I want to welcome today Brendan Haug, Assistant Professor of Classical Studies and Archivist of the Papyrology Collection here at the University of Michigan. Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for the invitation, the opportunity to speak to you today. I am by training an ancient historian, a papyrologist, but what I'll be talking about today is a project that has allowed me to move in a more modern direction. This is going to be something of an introduction to a portion, albeit a rather small portion, of the next book project that I will be working on. So to begin, a little bit about myself and how I came to this topic. I serve as the archivist of the Papyrology Collection half-time here at the University of Michigan in Hatcher Graduate Library. And in this capacity, I began to do, in 2015, I began to do a little bit of research into the history of the collection. First, that being entirely practical. I wanted to understand more about the collection I'm supposed to be supervising. But I began to focus more closely on the acquisition history and the legal status of the papyri in the collection that had come from Michigan's archaeological excavations in Egypt between 1924 and 1935, both at the site of Saknapaya-Naisas, modern Dime, for one season, and at Karanis, Komaushim for much longer, for fully 11 seasons from 24 to 35. Now, this research culminated in an open access article in 2021 published in the American Journal of Archaeology, in which I concluded that the balance of evidence strongly indicates that several thousand excavated papyri held by the University Library and the Papyrology Collection are still actually the legal property of the government of Egypt. Now, how did I make this sort of argument? Well, the evidence upon which the entirety of this article is based is the many thousands of documents covering the history of archaeological work in Egypt, as well as the papyrus collection held in our own institutional archives here at University of Michigan, the Bentley Historical Library on North Campus. These records were supplemented by a number of archival documents actually held by the papyrus collection up on the 8th floor of Hatcher. Now, in researching and writing this project, which was fairly narrow in compass, I had the opportunity to observe Michigan scholars at work between the 1920s and the 1950s. And I was able to explore their sometimes productive, sometimes contentious relationships with the many individuals and many institutions that made up the world of Egyptology in this period, sometimes called Egypt's late or semi-colonial period. Now, these individuals and institutions comprise, for instance, European and American fellow scholars, antiquities dealers, colonial bureaucracy, the colonial institution that ran Egypt's government and antiquities ministries, the Egyptian press and parliament, and many more. So in working on this project, it became clear to me that our archives here at the university offer really rich raw material for a history of Egyptology at Michigan, or more specifically, a history of the study of Greek and Roman Egypt here at the university. Now, this is going to be the subject of my next book project, which is admittedly only in its early stages. And it represents an attempt to do something a little bit different than other book-length treatments of Egyptological history that are available today. Now, this is perhaps a little bit too simplistic, but histories of Egyptology can kind of be divided into perhaps two major categories. We might call the first category something like celebratory narratives of great discoveries. So a couple of examples of these might be Jason Thompson's recent 3-part survey of Egyptology, Wonderful Things, or Egyptologist Toby Wilkinson's 2020 single-volume book, A World Beneath the Sands. Now, other treatments of Egyptological history take a more biographical approach. That is, they focus on the careers and personalities and relationships and discoveries of notable Egyptologists in the so-called golden age of Egyptology in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Now, to be clear, I think there is great value in all these works, and their authors very often don't shy away from aspects of earlier Egyptology that might today be viewed as problematic, such as the sometimes quite explicit racism of earlier scholars, the attempts to keep Egyptians out of the discipline, violations of antiquities laws, and so on. Now, while all these works, as I said, are valuable, my project is inspired by a couple of different sources. On the one hand is the work of the historian of modern Egypt, Donald Malcolm Reed, whose 2002 and 2015 works, Whose Pharaohs and Contesting Antiquity in Egypt, bring in the perspectives not only of Western scholars and Western institutions, but also those of Egyptians as well, specifically Egyptians in the press and other Egyptologists who were trying to break in to what was then still a very heavily Western discipline. I'm also inspired by a couple of different recent works that attempt to describe the world of archaeological labor in Egypt. That is, the many thousands of Egyptian archaeological workers who formed the backbone of Western excavations in the country. That is, they were the ones on their hands and knees in the dirt, pulling antiquities out of the earth. So what this project that I'm working on here is, it's an attempt to move towards something of a global or institutional history of Egyptology at Michigan. That is, a history of Egyptology that foregrounds the non-American individuals, as well as the international institutions that made up the social, scholarly, economic, and governmental infrastructure that allowed Michigan to establish itself in the 1920s as one of the premier institutions for the study of Greek and Roman Egypt here in the United States. Now, sadly, one of the areas where Michigan's archives are lacking, indeed the area in which, as far as I can tell, they are most lacking, is the perspective of Michigan's Egyptian laborers. Now, this is and not surprising, I think, since the ephemeral documentation that these laborers would have generated in their everyday work and perhaps even left behind was not the sort of stuff that Michigan scholars were likely to keep, since it was written in a language they themselves didn't speak or read, or at least not well. But briefly, what we can say is that in places in the Fayum in Karanis, where Michigan was working, we were reliant on an infrastructure of Egyptian labor that came not from local sources, but rather much farther to the south in the area of Cana and Qift, there at the horseshoe bend of the Nile down there in the far south. Now, many of the laborers that worked on Michigan's excavations were exceedingly well trained. They came from many years of experience and training very often at the excavations of the famous British Egyptologist William Flinders Petrie. Indeed, recent scholarship has been able to describe a massive labor economy in late 19th and early 20th century Egypt, centered around Qena and Qift, where Egyptian laborers there had almost a lock on or a monopoly on the provision of highly skilled labor on archaeological excavations. So we are very lucky, or from another perspective, very unfortunate to have only about 6 surviving documents that I at least have found in my research so far that give us a view of these individuals in their own hands and in their own language. In the last couple minutes here, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of these pieces, just so that we can introduce ourselves to who these individuals are, where they're coming from. So one of the pieces that I discovered 2 years ago is a certificate from the Umda, that is you might translate it as mayor or head of a village in Upper Egypt, who is attesting that a certain man by the name of Ahmad Rian is a trusted person. This is dated to the 21st of February, 1924. So we're here getting a glimpse at the very beginning of Michigan's work in Egypt through the hand of an individual by the name of Ahmad Rian, who would go on to be, I believe, a leader and a sort of a foreman of Michigan's Egyptian laborers. Here, his character is attested by the mayor and the Sheikh Nahya, that is the Sheikh of the district of the area of Kala, Markaz Qena, in the Mudirat of Qena in southern Egypt. They attest that Ahmad Rian, who is also called Bil Ramuzi, as well as another man by the name of Ismail Abu Bakr Mahmoud Ahmad and Ahmad Mahmoud Uthman Khalil, are all of them from the district. They are of good conduct and behavior, and they are, perhaps most importantly, well-mannered, and they give a certificate of this fact, signed and sealed. So this is, in a sense, the passport, the document that guarantees their good conduct and allows them entry into the excavations at the university, at Karanis, the university run by the University of Michigan. We have a small number of other documents, as I said, often extremely ephemeral, just little short notes and so forth. But here is one example of these, a list of payments to future Karanis workers, I should have said. That is for their train fare from Qift all the way up to the Fayum, while they will be at work at Michigan's excavations. So in the last little minute here, I just want to give you my favorite of these documents, and I think the most wonderful of those preserved. As I said, I am a papyrologist. We deal a lot with petitions from Egyptian villagers to the state. So we might refer to this as the latest dated petition from the ancient village of Karanis, or somewhat more tongue-in-cheek, the earliest petition attested from Kom Au Shim. This is a document sent by the heads of the Egyptian laborers at Kom Au Shim to the governor of the Fayum. Remember, all of these men are, for all intents and purposes, foreigners, even in their own country. That is, they're from the far south. They are not local to the area. And in addition to doing the difficult work of archaeology, they had to sometimes navigate a sometimes hostile local environment. Here, the laborers, the heads of the laborers, address a petition to the governor of the Fayum, and they write that it is from the antiquities workers of the American expedition at Kom Au Shim. They say they've been present at Kom Au Shim for 7 years now, and they're accustomed to go down to the village of Kasarashwan for their needs, whether by day or night, nearby village. No fault of their own, they say. Their arrival late at night, their arrival at night was late because we were working until 5 in the evening. After 5, whoever goes down to, for the needs of the men and the needs of the director of the expedition, they go down for the needs of the American expedition as well. And they ran into a fellow by the name of Ali Mahmoud Ubaid, the son of the Umda, that is the mayor of Qasr Aswan, at 7 in the evening. And he said to us, "What is the reason behind your entry into the village at night?" We said to him, "For our needs." And he said, "If it happens that one of you enters the village at night and I encounter him after 5 in the evening, I'll shoot him." We didn't understand the reason for this, they claim. He met the headmen, As-Samam, Ibrahim, Muhammad Abdul Karim, Abdullah Saeed, Badawi, Abdul Fattah, Hassani Hassan, and Muhammad Abdul Hassan Uthman. He met them on the night of, November 20th of 1930, and we request from your excellency to make provisions in respect to this matter and to notify us. So with that, what these very small selection of documents here at the University of Michigan allow us is, unfortunately, the very briefest of glimpses at some of the people who were really the most important figures in an excavation like that at Karanis, since it was they who were doing the overwhelming majority of the work that allowed artifacts to be excavated and safely packed and transferred to Cairo, at which point they were divided with the University of Michigan and Cairo, and some of which then came back here to Ann Arbor. These documents also, as I said, form one part, if only a very small part, of a much larger history of the study of Greek and Roman Egypt at Michigan that I hope will be the first deep dive into a single institution's archives in the attempt to write a history of the discipline that takes account of all individuals and all institutions that were part of the building of this discipline here at Michigan. So with that, I will end, and I believe there are some minutes for questions as well.
Absolutely. So this is the question portion of the program. If you have questions for Brendan, please feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask your question, or you can put it in the meeting chat and we can read it out.
I was wondering why the workers came from such a far distance to work in the Fayum.
This is from what I can tell, this seems to be basically the center of archaeological labor in this period. This was where basically the most skilled laborers were resident. This is where they had gotten a lot of their training on some of the major sites excavated in that area. And as I was trying to describe it, it seems like basically since they formed these Qiftis or Qiftis formed basically the core of the most skilled and most experienced, most well-connected laborers, they seem to have had something like a monopoly on the provision of labor. This was where the good people were, and so if you were at a Western institution that was digging in the country, this was basically where you were going to be getting most of your workers. I'm certain there are people here at Michigan who know a little bit more about this history and could correct me if I'm incorrect at that. But from what I can tell from my research, that just seems to be this seems to be where the skill was.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It looks like we have a question, 2 questions in the meeting chat. So from Patricia, given works being repatriated from major Western museums to artifacts country of origin, where do these 1900 papyri fit?
That is a really excellent question. So my work on the excavated papyri although I ended up being extremely confident and said so in my article that these objects don't actually belong to the University of Michigan. There's, let's say, 1% doubt there that there might be something going on with a number of these pieces that may have allowed Michigan to claim ownership over them. What we would need then would be access to archives in Egypt, if they exist, that fills in some of the gaps that I noticed in my article, that is missing letters, missing documentation, missing communication between us and the Antiquities Ministry in Egypt, that would allow us to determine once and for all what's going on with these pieces. Now, the reason I made the article open access was so that scholars in Egypt could actually read this and I hope discuss it themselves. And it is possible that in the future there might be increased interest in Egypt's Antiquities Ministry to potentially recall papyri from Michigan. They did do so we did return things in the 1939, 1940, as well as in the early 50s that seemed to have been returned by a recall that was initiated and then was basically cut short by the July Revolution that overthrew the British government, the British-backed Egyptian monarchy in 1952, 1953. So it could be that we're at the beginning now of potentially reinitiating a return of non-Michigan-owned papyri. But the ball is, I think, at this point in Egypt's court, and they would have to decide what it is they want to do. I should say I don't have any personal contacts high up in say the Antiquities Ministry. My contacts are all fellow scholars who also don't have contacts there. So I haven't heard anything. But if they were to contact us someday, I think we are ready to have a discussion.
Thank you. I just want to point everyone to a comment in the chat from our Kelsey Museum curator and Egyptologist, Janet Richards. Hi, Brendan. Just bringing to your attention the work that our Egyptian colleagues are doing at the Abydos Temple Paper Archive Project. And then there's a link there, collecting the Antiquities Organization's own archival material. And Janet, if you have further comments, I'd invite you to go ahead.
Sure. I'll just say that, in fact, several of our colleagues in Sohag Governorate have started amassing a growing, already huge archive of documents, of records kept by the Antiquities Organization inspectorate offices in different parts of the country, starting with the Abydos area in Sohag. But the project has been so successful that the ministry has started sending sometimes late 19th century as well as early 20th century records to be processed in this project. It's an amazing project, and they have a couple of examples on their website. I provided the link for you there of the kind that Brendan shared with us in this great talk. We actually had one of the co-directors of the project present with us for the talk, but I see that it's Friday there. He may have gone off to pray or to finally have dinner. But I encourage everyone to visit this site. And Brendan, if you're interested, Wendy Doyen, who's also present, and I can put you in touch with the directors of that project. You might.
Yeah, this is wonderful because I guess you might call it my grail is any sort of institutional archival correspondence preserved in Egypt that fills in the major gaps we have. I mean, one of the biggest problems that I ran into with my earlier article is that we often have the responses, Michigan's responses to letters from the ministry, but we then don't have the original correspondence. So sometimes it's very unclear what was actually being asked of us. It seems like we were often trying to hold the ministry at bay. They were trying to get things back from us, and we were always trying to sort of push back. So I would very much like to see often what's being asked of us, what we were being asked to do. So there's another comment here. Can you offer any descriptions of the stamps on the documents? I believe my Arabic is rough and ready at best. I think these are mostly the seals of the individuals in question. Some documents have thumbprints as well, but I'm pretty sure these are mostly identifying seal marks for the individuals in question. I think a lot of them, they're not signing their own names. They're probably not literate, so I think these are the ways in which they identify themselves in legal documents more clearly.
Can I jump in? I'm not sure.
Please, yes, help me.
Okay, I just wasn't sure because I can't see if there's like a way to raise my hand but
no,
I
no.
unmuted myself, right?
You are fine. Yeah, I can hear you
Okay.
perfectly.
Actually, before I forget, can you go back to the slide that has the first letter you showed? Because I actually think you have the wrong date there.
Oh dear, do I?
And so you said that this letter came at the very beginning of the Karanis excavations, but I actually think it's 1934, not 1924.
Is that a 3? Yeah.
So I can't quite see that, but it looks to me like 34. So this would actually be right at the end.
Yeah,
That's just a minor point, but maybe something to check. But I was going to say more importantly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the 2, and that's definitely a 3. No. You're totally fine. Yeah,
because you can tell it against the 2 and the 21 there. That's
exactly right.
I'm
a papyrologist.
Those things are really easy to get tripped up on. I've done that many times.
No, I appreciate the correction. Thank you.
And I'm very excited to hear that you're working with this archive in particular. And I'd spent a little bit of time almost 10 years ago now looking at some stuff at the Kelsey and the Bentley. And it's a great archive, and especially that you have this period of 10 years that you can look at sort of in one site and one expedition. And I don't really have a particular question because right now I'm actually on a postdoc at RC in Egypt looking for these sorts of archives myself. My dissertation is really a history of the Guftis. I have lots of things coming out, and as Janet mentioned, lots of other people also have things sort of forthcoming. It's a really a very dynamic area of research right now. So I just wanted to give you my email and say, please reach out. I can give you lots of references. I can give you, some stuff that I have coming out also specifically about the Guftis. And also, I've cited some of these archives actually. So I think there's a lot of conversation that we could have about it, because it's very well documented, this period at Karanis. And so I think these things are really great to be that you're going to publish them, because it's a fantastic little window of documentation. So but I'll just put my email in the chat, and let's just be in touch, because all kinds of things that sort of, I think, go past the scope of this today, but I would love to talk more.
Well, that'd be wonderful. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions?
welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Somewhat fussy 3-year-old downstairs who may need attention here shortly.
Well, it is 12:30, so I just want to thank Brendan so much for your talk today and for everyone's participation and comments. It was incredibly interesting. And as always, if there are no more questions, we will go ahead and wrap up. And I invite you all to continue just to join and support these talks. Take a look at our Kelsey Museum website for information on the next one. And thank you so much.